All right, this is where it gets really exciting, and this is why Jack is not here, because he couldn't handle the excitement. Just as we opened the meeting with a panel, we're going to close it out with a panel, and this is going to be more interactive, more collaborative than anything else. We don't have a PowerPoint, we don't have anything fancy. But what I'm going to ask is for a lot of participation, okay? Because this particular topic is addressing what roadblocks do we experience in getting pavement preservation implemented, not only on the agency side, but on the industry side as well. And so to help me with this, we have Caitlin Kallikak from Microservicing Contractors. We have Rex Everly from the National Center of Pavement Preservation, and we have Sean Brose from Vance Brothers. So to get this going, what I'd like you guys to do is repeat after me. Joke. Say it again. Joke. Coke. Poke. Smoke. What do you call the white of an egg? Ah, all right. Well, it is an egg white, right? But the point of that exercise is this. You are all high-level thinkers, and you are very engaged and very knowledgeable about pavement preservations and what arrows you have in your quiver to treat these pavements, right? And it's very easy for us, because we are experts in this and we're here investing our time, effort, and energy, that we just assume, right, like a white of an egg it's not a yolk, it's a white of an egg. It's very easy for us to fall into a rut and assume that everybody knows what we're doing. For example, John had a nice comment from a citizen saying, "Why'd you turn our road back into gravel?" Well, we assume, hey, we're doing the right thing. We're putting down a chip seal. This is going to extend the life of this. This is going to save the citizens money, other things. But we run into these assumptions, and sometimes these assumptions create roadblocks. And so what I wanted to do, instead of industry just sharing a bunch of our roadblocks, which we are going to share a few of them to get you thinking, because this is information that we are going to gather to make these presentations and these webinars and these meetings even more effective, more efficient, and more profitable for everyone. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with the agencies in the room and ask you, what roadblocks do you experience with implementing pavement preservation strategy? So we're going to write these down, by the way, and I think this is recorded, but this is going to give us a lot of helpful information that we can use to implement and discuss later on.
I touched on this on the last panel, and when it comes to cold in place recycle, and that is the fear of an error or the fear of a failure in the past with certain treatments. And in some cases, they'll take those, they won't go back to it. They don't want to revisit. They don't want to look at what's wrong. And it's kind of a narrow-minded thinking, you know, gosh, this went bad. This went really bad. What are we supposed to do now? Well, go back, reevaluate, see if there's something in your specs you need to change, see if there's something in your methods. Maybe it was the contractor, but don't just give up on it. I think that's something that is kind of big in our agency, is if they don't like the treatment, they don't want to do it.
Yeah, we definitely see that from, you know, the industry side as well. You know, one bad thing, they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's a process, for sure, and it's a lot of education, training. Yeah, Paul?
Yeah, Brett, it's like we've talked during the breaks. I'd echo the same thing they're saying is our leadership in our districts. If they've had trouble with one in the past, it's the once bitten, twice shy. And getting over one that may not have gone the way we wanted to in the past, and how are we going to avoid that in the future. The other one that we've talked about is public perception. You know, it paints it black, it looks like it's an HMA overlay, but it's not necessarily going to ride like an HMA overlay, or you're going to see you're still going to see the cracks are going to be sealed, but you're still going to see them. And folks, we get calls in of, this is the worst HMA overlay I've ever seen. And then they have to defend it's not an HMA overlay. So those are some of the hurdles that we see.
From an industry, you know, we feel like we need to do a better job at training and communicating well in advance of the project being, you know, constructed. And if there's a way, you know, that we can do that, you know, I'm speaking as an industry as a whole, it just works out so much better for us, you know, because if we can make it easy on the agencies and give them the knowledge and the comfort to answer those questions and those calls, we all win, right? John was saying the other day, when I asked him this question, I said, you know, what, as an industry, what can we do to make your life easier or to help you? He said, you know, so much of it is communication. And I think the panel on Tuesday opened up with this, and Eric did a good job at showing how he uses the media and social media and the local newspapers and other things to really try to communicate what is going on well in advance, right? And John had mentioned it would be great to have a repository of, you know, information that they could just grab and give to their media people. Hey, you know what, we're gonna do a chip seal, this is why, and it shows them the cost savings and the longevity and all the great reasons, you know, why we're doing this. And, you know, the more they know, the better. It's funny, I live in a private subdivision, and we did a mill and overlay of our subdivision. And I thought I was the only hot mix asphalt guy that lived in our subdivision, but little did I know every single house on the block was an expert in hot mix. And I said, man, what an idiot am I? I needed to get out in front of them and explain what is going on well in advance, and I would have saved myself a lot of frustration. What else from agency side do you guys see that are roadblocks that we can record and we can document these things, so at other meetings we can have a roundtable discussion on these things and try to brainstorm and come up with some ideas really to help you eliminate these obstructions?
I'm in the research section at MnDOT, and when we look at new products, and mastic could be a good example. Quite a few years ago when we started looking at the hot pour mastic products, there were really 3 different products that I was aware of, and the specification by the manufacturer for each one was very different. So it was almost impossible for us then to write a single spec. We also need an AASHTO pad, which is a completely other fun hurdle to get through, but we've got to have something, a specification we can bid on. And after quite a few years, I think we finally threw up our hands and say, we just listed the 3 products and said, you know, use one of these. Now ASTM, I think, has a very wide open spec, but that's what we're using. So I think I'd like to see MnDOT, and especially on the properties we own, use a lot of rejuvenator products. You want
Right.
to try and give me a rejuvenator spec that handles the maltines to the bio products? Wow, it doesn't exist. So we're doing
Right.
some good work with rejuvenators now, and we just list the products.
Right.
So as we look at new products, say, I think we need help with the spec. Then the other part that I've kind of enjoyed, and fortunately the bid office hasn't thrown me out of the building yet, they used to have the super pave specification. That's what they handled. Everything now, microsurfacing, chip sealing, fog sealing, all these new products now are ending up in their office, and their workload just keeps going up and up and up. They've got Joel to help them do that now, but as you implement a new product, where's it going to be housed in the department? Who's going to do that? Who's going to be those champions? So,
Yeah.
but the spec, I think, is really interesting. Big challenge.
I want to get back to your comment, the couple comments about the fear of failure. And I get it. Nobody wants to have a failure. What I've noticed in my career is that there's a top-down on preservation from the central office people, the people that get it. And they're pushing down. And then there's usually a champion somewhere out in the field who's been doing it for a long time, and that champion gets it. But then we come across that immovable border or wall, which is an area engineer, or whatever you call that person that's in charge of that group of roads, and they don't want to have a failure. And I know, like Jerry, I know MnDOT does a lot of new stuff. How do you give people a permission to not fail, but permission to stick their neck out and try something that's going to be good without having them blow their career up? Is there a way to do that? Does your research, if you run a project through the research, does that kind of relieve that pressure off the district or the area? Or
I'm not sure I've got a real good answer to that. I'm trying to think of some of the bigger failures, and so being in the central office, I'm not at the district level where somebody might get put in the doghouse,
Yeah.
and I probably wouldn't hear about it, so.
okay. Yeah, that was just a comment or a question for folks, so I don't know. Anybody think about that, is how do you help your area engineers? Again, you don't want to waste millions of dollars, but how do you help them take that little bit of a chance and give them the support so it's not such a risk?
Let's take one more from the agency, and then we'll share some industry ones that we've come up with.
This might be just an Illinois thing, but it seems like the conversations between the agency field personnel and the contractor have been pretty contentious for a while now. From the agency's perspective, while they don't know everything, they've got people somewhere in the agency that know something. And a lot of the folks with the contractors seem to think that the agency doesn't know anything. So we've come a long way in our knowledge on these treatments, especially in the past 10 years. So I think kind of pumping the brakes on getting into the heated conversations and actually having better communication between the two sides would go a long ways. And that would not leave a bad taste in the mouth of the resident engineers the next time they go to a project that, they've got a microsurfacing or a chip seal going down, and they're coming back with either a different contractor or maybe it's even the same contractor. But it's one of those things we need to kind of cool the jets on everybody and understand that we might not know everything, but we've got a pretty good base, and we've definitely got people within the agency that know what they're talking about. And I get calls all the time from all over the state on, hey, we've got this situation, what should we do here? So, and I'm happy to answer them and talk to the resident, to the contractor, whatever, but it's generally we need to all kind of take a step back and relax a little bit and have cool heads and talk things out. Because we might be looking at a completely different perspective than you guys are.
Yeah, that's a really good comment. Thank you for sharing that. And I couldn't agree more. And hopefully others in the industry feel the same way. I mean, I know everyone that we work with in the state and of Missouri, and we started the Missouri Pavement Preservation Council. We want to take a very collaborative, hands-on approach with the agencies. And I think the very best thing that we could ever do is have a pre-job meeting, pre-job plan, discuss the pros and cons or issues or concerns or anything right up front. And we might even be able to identify some issues that, that nobody had thought about. And that goes a long way to just move that project along and move those relationships along. And I couldn't agree more. And that kind of dovetails into this. Some of the industry things that we have seen, it just so happens that Caitlin and myself and Sean, we all provide this product, but it's microsurfacing. And whether it's microsurfacing or chip sealing or rejuvenator or fog sealing, whatever it is, we want to make certain it's on the right road at the right time. And I think you brought it up, is if it gets on the wrong road and it's a failure, it hurts the industry. Not only does it hurt the agency and the taxpayers, but it hurts the industry, because if people think that it doesn't work, they're not going to do it, right? And so from an industry standpoint, we would really like to appeal to you all and say, hey, if you have a project, an engineer puts out a project, could you have us look at the road? Have us look at the road. And there are a lot of roads that we have looked at and we say, no, we don't want to put microsurfacing on this. You may want to, but we don't want to, because this is going to blow up in 2 years and nobody's going to remember that it was on the wrong road. And so if we could get it on the right roads, and if you could lean on the contractors, plural, to look at them, that would help. Another one that we run into is we would like to have more trained inspectors that are on the jobs. And if that means that before we ever go to a job, that we bring them into training or give them a webinar or literature or whatever, or meet with them. Because there's a lot of young men and women that are entering into the profession, and they're thrown on the job, and they may have never seen these treatments. So if we could provide some training for them. I think throughout the 3 days, one thing that has been very pervasive is a gap in the knowledge. I mean, the knowledge is right up here. It's all of you that are in the room, right? And it's how do we get that down to the lower levels? Another thing that we run into is we would like to see a little more communication, maybe a little more flexibility on not only minority participation. Gosh, I think everybody's trying to get minority participation, but sometimes those numbers are just so high that, I mean, it's impossible to get. And maybe a little more flexibility, a little more communication around completion dates and times. And it also helps us from the industry if we kind of know what the agencies are planning on doing or what they're planning on putting out well in advance, so we have an opportunity to really think about it and prepare and analyze and evaluate whether or not this is the right treatment for the right roads. Anything, Rex, Sean, Caitlin, that you would like to add? to that? Together, a high tide raises all ships, right? And we're lucky here in our state. We have a lot of people that compete on our products, and we all work together because we know whoever wins the job, it's got to be good. And if they do a good job, there's going to be other bid opportunities, and we all win. And it's incumbent upon us as an industry to really strengthen our communication and provide the training for all of you. So I want you to lean on the industry and your contractors, because if they're good, they're going to provide educational training, lunch and learns, webinars, all of that stuff. And together we just get better, right? So that concludes this part, but before I finish, this is very interactive, I want you to stand up. Stand up. And I want you to raise your right hand, or your left hand if you're left-handed, as high as you can. Now I want you to bend your elbow and pat yourself on the back for being here. Thank you very much.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.